Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Conservatish. My name is Peter Edgar Feliciano. You can find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano, Feliciano, or on Twitter at Rule62Peter. Wherever you're listening or watching, make sure you subscribe, share, rate, and review. Leave a comment. It helps the algorithm. I'll be working on an album this year. So if you'd like to buy some merch, I've got new merch coming, and that's going to be dropping. Well, I don't have a date for it, but you can go to peterfeliciano.com to purchase that stuff. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's the great Mike, aka Full Sturker Training, all the way from somewhere like 45 minutes east of Austin, Texas. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you very much for joining me on the show today. Where can people find you online?
So you see right there at @fullsticker_training is the IG. The same name would just type it in without the underscore on Facebook would find our page as well. We're not on Twitter, or I guess X now it is, right? Or really anything else. Not huge on the socials, honestly. But yeah, we do post some good content on IG mostly. My wife does some cool stuff on TikTok, especially with like natural birth stuff. If you're into that, she's incredibly knowledgeable person for that. She's also a strength coach, trainer, all that good stuff, massage therapist. So we're into that health and wellness thing.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, a couple of things. You and I have started a chat, and one of the ways that started was you just reached out because you're a stalker, and I appreciate that very much. But we went and had a good couple of combos, and I went and visited the gym and things like that. I'm interested, especially in talking to you about, gee golly, I mean everything, but health and wellness, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that I do in the well, I usually put it under the umbrella of anti-lizard game, or anti-state game, or anti-government game. It gets easy to get swept away in the crazy. It gets easy to be swept away in trying to control stuff that we are not in control of. Trying to control someone else's opinion on Twitter, trying to worry about, oh my God, they're gonna shoot us with death rays or whatever the heck. Oh, the puppy. But in that, a lot of us lose, and I know I do sometimes, lose the fact that my cul-de-sac of responsibility is small. And am I taking care of myself first and foremost? Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally? Am I taking care of myself? Not just because that keeps my perception clear of the lizards and what they're doing and the crazy stuff and the blah, 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 but also takes back my energy and is the main way that we win the war. It really is. If all of us were taking care of ourselves, we wouldn't. Do you think that the guy who installs the cameras for the World Economic Forum is a good person? Do you think he meditates every day? Come on, guys, right? So can you speak to your experience a little bit when you've taken care of yourself, when you haven't, what that was like, what got you into doing what you do and what you do?
Absolutely. And dude, I got to say, I love that we're just like diving right the hell in, because this is exactly what I was hoping to talk about, man, because this is what I see like in our world. And when I say our world, I'm going to say the conservative world just for simplicity's sake. I don't like, labeling things simply like that, but just for the sake of conversation, I'm going to say that world. That's where I see people kind of failing, I guess you could say, because like you said your cul-de-sac. I call that our sphere of influence. And I'm not the first one. Obviously, I'm stealing that from other contexts and all that. But that's where we should be working, right? Is within our sphere of influence, right? That's where we're going to make the most impact on our communities, right? Going out and protesting, these large things. Like, we can talk trash and do the memes about WHO and WF and all that, and that's great. Like you kind of comment or made a post about earlier, but like at the end of the day, that sphere of influence is what we need to focus on in terms of like making an actual impact for the world and our own lives, right? And that starts with ourselves, and that's where a lot of people are. They're dropping the ball, I guess you could say. They're missing the point. They're missing the big picture, whatever you want to say. That is what's going on. I see a lot where they're fighting battles on other fronts, and they're seeing their eyes are open. They see what's going on, but they're overweight. They get winded walking up a flight of stairs, and it's like, how can you? Because let's be real here and let's be honest. Like, one of the main ways that they're waging war against us is through our food supply, right? Through all the toxicity that we're presented with, just being in this modern world that we do not have control over, and yet we do have control over, right? Some of it we don't. What they're spraying in the air, whatever, all that stuff, we can go all conspiracy theory if you want about that. But the fact is, there is that stuff going on. So if we can choose not to put that in our bodies with the water we're drinking, the food we're consuming, the supplements we're taking, etc. I mean, the clothes we're wearing, I mean, the pans we're using. I go on for a long time about the things you can do to avoid the toxins and make yourself as strong as possible and resilient as possible, because that's what we're talking about, right? It wears you down. It makes you less resilient. It makes you susceptible, right? Neurologically, mentally, physically. We're sick. We're anxious. We're depressed. We can't sleep at night, right? And a lot of that does have to do with our environment in ways that we don't realize, right? We're trying to detoxify our minds from the junk, which is great. But if we're not doing the same thing for our bodies through exercise, nutrition, being mindful of, like some of the things I was just mentioning, we're losing out, it's interesting to me. I see the same people wanting to kind of fight the man, as it were, but then going just to the doctor for every little thing and being on 7 pharmaceutical drugs. And it's like, that's one of the primary arms of that so-called man. You know what I mean? So like, it's I'm glad we're bringing this up, to say the least.
Right. How did you start taking care of yourself?
Honestly, it started with, I was very lucky to be born in the family that I was born into, right? It started with my parents, their grandparents. I'm a bit Cherokee. I'm 1/8, right? I'm not going to claim to be Native American, but, my great grandmother Star, I hear stories about her, and that's kind of cool. And the natural remedies that my family chose, like, there's a story that's told where, I think it's my great grandmother. She went to a normal doctor. They were living in Oklahoma because, the big Cherokee Reserve was there. And basically the doctor told her, she's going to die if you stay here. The air quality, she had respiratory issues. The air quality was so bad in Oklahoma, like she will die if you stay here. So my grandfather, rather than trying to find medicines or accepting that, found Tucson, Arizona. It has a very unique air quality and all that, and found natural methods. They actually started a honeybee farm, started using raw honey and things like that. And this was back in the early 1900s, right? They went to Arizona to do that. And so just it's been instilled in me for a very long time. Like I made the joke to my wife, recently, that I would love going to sleepovers at other kids' houses growing up, because that's where I could have sodas and all that, because that was not in my house. Because we also were kind of pretty religious as well. So in that upbringing, and I rebelled against that very strongly, by the way, but the religious part at least. But because of my upbringing, it was instilled for a very early age to use food, as medicine, to be very mindful of what you're eating, because that has such a big impact on your just being in general. And I count myself very, very lucky for that.
Right. Can you speak to a little bit about the rebellion? Did you rebel at all, like food wise? Like, I'm not saying like you said, oh, I go to friends' houses for junk food and blah blah blah. But like for me, as an example, I've dealt with food a lot in my life, and dealing with eating disorders, and thank God I've been sober a long time, and I've been away from binge eating for 2.5 years. Incredible shit. Very grateful. But that mindset behind it is one of the important factors. I don't think that we run to the things that you were just talking about, that we've been talking about. I think we run to them for a reason. It's not just because, sure, it's easy. Sure, it's plentiful. Yes, blah, blah, blah. But also it's a coping, right? We all need to cope. Right. With this, being a human being is difficult, right? It's insane that, especially now that we have all this access to all this suffering throughout the world. Like, I could bring up my phone right now and find a beheading video in 2 minutes or less. So, and they often share it with us. So I don't even have to wait that long. It's not on, rotten.com anymore. It's on fucking Twitter. So the thing it's hard. And so we cope. And food was one of those coping mechanisms for me. And I'm not denigrating coping mechanisms in general. I'm not denigrating the idea of we all have our vices. What I'm saying is, I was so unhealthy with it that I needed to fix that the reason why I went to, food or whatever it is, and even fucking vape or whatever is point B. What got me there is point A. And if I don't deal with point A first, of course I'm going to go for the coping. Of course I'm going to go to the unhealthy food. Of course I'm going to go to the booze and the drugs and so that's one of the elements of my experience, was that I had to, instead of, especially food wise, I kept fixing the outside. I kept fixing the symptom without dealing with the disease first. Right. I kept dealing with, okay, I'll eat this, or I won't eat that, or I'll change this, and I'll work out 80 million times, and I'll blah, 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 blah. And then the whole time I still am dealing with that insecurity that makes me reach for the food. I'm still dealing with that fear that makes me want to use food as cope. Right. So yeah, I don't know. That's just a point that came up for me.
Absolutely. And it's a great point. And it is an interesting piece of kind of everything that I've been talking about, because my question to you would be like, just now, when you just, kind of finished out what you were saying, like, oh, the insecurity, you kind of mentioned what those driving forces were for you in particular, right? The insecurities, right? The fear, right? Those particular things. And I don't know, I don't know you well enough. I haven't known you long enough, but maybe there's some trauma behind some of that stuff. Who knows, right? Usually there is. But the question that I ask, right, having done what I've done for so long and helping the amount of people that I have and seeing like the reality of the situation, was some of that at least driven by the fact that your hormones were a little bit messed up because of various environmental factors, right? And you were depressed and things were imbalanced with your neurotransmitters, and your gut health was bad because of the food you were eating, which led to a lack of serotonin production, right? Which led to your ability to cope with those things in a more healthy way. And you had to turn to something that produced a dopamine response, for example. Right. And so that's the question. That's where I think people aren't asking the deeper questions for these things, because it's such a touchy subject, right? Mental health and trauma and all that stuff. And believe me, I've battled depression my whole life as well. And I've actually recently looked back and, because they tried to put me on Lexapro and all that stuff when I was a teenager, and, I had ADHD according to them and all that. Fortunately, my mom was like, no, you're not putting him on speed. Like, that's ridiculous. I mean, let's be real here. Given, a thing that's one molecule away from methamphetamine to 3-year-olds is not a good idea. But, that's a whole different topic. But yeah, like the questions aren't being asked deeper, but that's right. That's what I was saying is recently I even looked into my past with some of that depression, with some of those issues I had. I was a troublesome teenager. I got arrested. I gave my mom and dad hell. I was rebellious in a lot of ways, if you want to go into it, and then looking back on that, and a lot of it was depression. Like, I was not a happy person. And I recognized some factors, in my own life that like drove it and that are particular to me. But I recently had sort of an epiphany. Like, I think it was even the other day, where I was like, man, like, I was 13, 14 years old. I wasn't in right like I do now. I ate better than most for sure because of my upbringing, but I was still like, at the school cafeteria eating the cookies and the crappy food they were serving and all that when I wasn't at home, So like, I wondered how some of like my behavioral issues and the things that I did as a teenager weren't just the natural teenage rebellion, and they were at least amplified, right, by some of that. Because what we see now is sort of unprecedented with some of the behaviors in public, right, that we're seeing with some people. And like, it just seems like insanity is rampant. And so again, you just have to ask yourself, like, what is a commonality, right?
Yeah, it feeds itself. So like when I would, I'll say I'm insecure, I'm, say, so, being insecure about my weight as an example. Okay, I reach for food to cope with that, which aids and abets the gaining of weight and the sluggishness and the tiredness and the depression and the insecurity. Ta-da, right? So it's all kind of the same beast. And I do want to talk a little bit about kind of being easy on ourselves in this game, but I think the main factor I wanted to, or not the main factor, but the thing that's coming up for me is also that idea of, so for me, and this is not news to any of my listeners and followers, but one of the things that helped me change fully, it wasn't, I thought I just needed to beat the shit out of myself to get me, to get me to stop doing those things that were unhealthy for me. Right.
At least
So, but yeah, it's okay. The puppy. So I thought I needed to, be quote unquote hard on myself. My definition of hard on myself was not healthy, right? For a long time. You did it again. You ate that fucking giant pizza by yourself. You're such a piece of shit. You're so fat. You're so, just fucking ragging on myself. And then which continued the behavior, right? I didn't know, and this is just like a little secret, and I know it may not be applicable to everybody, and it may, produce vagaries of, there's lots of people who do the whole like self-acceptance thing to the point of that means I can do whatever I want, and I can hurt people and I can hurt myself, and you don't have any blah blah blah. But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is one of the main factors that made me change was being kind to myself. One of the main factors that made me begin to make incremental changes was first, and not even accepting, but just being fucking kind, just putting down the whip was one of the main factors that made me start changing, and so I'm just throwing that out there to anybody who might, because I think it is an element of self-care that just in general, a lot of the anti-government, the anarcho, capitalists, the libertarians, the whatever, conservatives miss. It's been co-opted by selfish douchebags in the left, and we miss the gems because it's surrounded or used by people who are shitbirds.
That's a really good point, and I agree with that 1,000,000%. I mean, to give I haven't really mentioned what it is that I do. I realized, I've been a strength nutrition coach for 17 years. I was a pro strongman there for a little while. I worked with a lot of people, but it's interesting because, like, when I first got into being a coach trainer, all that good stuff, it's because of the fitness aspect, right? I was like, oh, I love working out. I love the human body and how it could perform and how the amazing things it could do, and helping people become healthier. But I always looked at it in a much more holistic way than what I saw around me with my colleagues and fellow trainers and stuff. And the way my career has gone is the way I put it is now I'm a holistic wellness coach. I'm not even like a strength coach anymore. Like, like today I had a 3-hour conversation with a guy just about mindset. He's a new client. We on-ramped him today. And all we were talking about was the psychological component. And he brought up some childhood trauma and past stuff that he was like, wow, man, you helped me just connect some dots from like some childhood stuff wow. And he just like put some stuff together that he never realized. And like, that was day one, so like, and now I'm excited to work with him. And I'm incredibly passionate about it, but it's branched into something much greater than I could have expected, and more broad in terms of like the people I can help. Because a lot of trainers, they're good at what they do in terms of they can help you lose some weight, but that's about it. You know what I mean? They're not taking you any deeper. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because I've had people work with me for 10 plus years, many people, and like after a while, like it's funny, they start calling me their life coach. They start calling me things other than just just a regular trainer, you know what I mean? And it's a really amazing thing that we get to do out here. My wife is similar. The fact that her and I linked up and found each other, and we're so similar, because I don't know if you know aware of the numbers, but there's some ridiculous percentage, like 99% of trainers quit after a year because it's hard, man. You're being a trainer, like you're dealing with people in a very vulnerable state. Like a lot of people look at it as a very superficial, surface level, just like, oh, you're counting reps. It's you're getting people just to look good. And it's like, yeah, when that person comes in who's 350 pounds and she's crying in front of me because she can't get up and down off the ground to play with her grandkids or her kids, let alone, like it's so much deeper. It goes so much deeper. Like, yeah, if you're just trying to get abs and stuff like that, sure. And some of this gym culture can be incredibly toxic, but that's not what we do. You know what I mean? And it's really awesome to be able to help people through what we do. You know what I mean? And like get deeper with people, because the way I put it is, when someone's, between a set, gasping for air, muscles burning, like just trying to, recover from something intense physically, all of their walls are down, man. You can really get to the meat of some things. You can really get to know people. You can really help them address some issues. And I'm not a therapist, right? That's not what I do. But it's like a component of what I do. You know what I mean? It inevitably is if you're a good trainer, and any good trainer will tell you that. But like, it has allowed me to help people in a way that I never anticipated. And I have people come to me years later telling me the ways that I helped them. It's just amazing. And I say that because that's the power of exercise and fitness and wellness and all that. Is it's like, because a lot of people, again, look at it in a very superficial way, like it's just about losing weight or something, a number on a scale. And it's just like, it's so much more than that. And that's kind of a part of the message I'm trying to get out there, is like, if you find the right people, get a community, right? Because that's kind of how CrossFit blew up, was a community element, right? That's really why it blew up. And I'm not even like a huge fan of CrossFit in terms of its substance, like in terms of the workouts itself, but like the community they developed is unparalleled. So like, yeah, I'm kind of rambling right at this point, but fitness, man, and health and wellness is just something that can be a very deep, like transformative thing for people. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that.
Right. And yeah, and I think it exactly echoes the thing I was saying about dealing with symptom versus dealing with the actual disease. Right. In that, I've had, I remember one time, so the heaviest I've ever been was 315 pounds, right? It was back in 2017, right? Now, outside, yeah, that's one thing. But inside, that's what caused it. See, I was fucking hating on myself constantly, right? And I've been in the spiritual game and the self-care game for a long time, but I thought that the way, like I said, to reiterate, but I thought that the way to beat myself out of those character defects, if you want to call them that, was to be hard on myself. And that caused deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper shit that I'm still fucking healing from, and did not address. So I lost 100 pounds. At that point, I went down to 210 at one point, right? But it was also on a fucking starve myself diet, right? So not only did my eating disorder include overeating, now it included restricting. So it's a fun little, I would starve myself, and then binge, and then starve myself and binge, and starve myself and binge. Really horrible shit I did to my body. And that's okay. I'm not hard on myself about it. And et cetera, et cetera. But why I bring that up is because I lost the weight. I went down to 210 and I was super proud of myself. But then people would tell me, like, you're looking like too skinny. And I'd be like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like in my head, it's just like, you don't fucking understand what I've dealt with, blah, 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 blah. And then I got off the starvation diet. And what happened? Went up and up and up and up. And I think at one point I was back up to 285, right? So I was just doing this thing because I wasn't addressing the actual fucking problem. The fat wasn't the problem, the real problem. It is a tool, right? The eating plan is a tool, but it's not the actual disease fixer. It's not the actual solution. I needed to work on the inner stuff that made me reach for that made me hate myself, that made me blah, 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 blah. Right. Yeah. And I'll give you a perfect example of something that I have found that I think it echoes what you just talked about. It's a small example, but the other day, I don't play golf. I ain't no, I'm only half white. So I don't play golf very frequently, ever. But when I was a kid, we'd have golf clubs and we just, I don't know where they came from, but we'd hit shit and blah, blah, blah. Boys. But I went for a work event over to, what is it called? Some driving range game thing that they have going on. And so I went there and I hit a couple balls. I'm not taking it seriously. It's just we're not even playing a structured game. We're not doing real competition. But I noticed throughout the beginning, I'm like hitting it sucks, and I'm just not doing very well. And I'm just thinking to myself like, oh, okay, this is because I don't play this, right? I don't know how to do it, blah, 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 blah. And then I don't know what happened. I think I was starting to beat myself up a little bit about it, even though it was a nothing game with fucking coworkers. But I just thought to myself, fuck that. I prayed a little bit and just started just hitting the ball because of kind of abandon, just like not overthinking it, just doing it. All of a sudden I started kicking ass. And so it's like, it proves again to me that one of the main factors, whatever you want to call it, I think could be called confidence, could be called whatever, but is just not being hard on myself, not overthinking it. I thought I needed to like swing, like keep it like the main flat part of the club, like completely flush throughout my whole swing of where I wanted it. And then I started just just hit it. All of a sudden I started hitting great. You know what I mean? So I think that's an example of that thing where what's actually stopping me over and over, I see examples in my life. What actually, quote unquote, stops me is not knowing. It's not the skill, right? It's not the lack of whatever. It's the lack of confidence. That's what it's the lack of, it's the overthinking for me.
Well, the power of not giving a fuck is powerful.
Yes, it is.
I mean, straight up, I was talking about this with a client earlier. It's kind of funny. I was chuckling in my head when you were saying that, because that's exactly what we're talking about is there's power in not giving a fuck, right? And that's not giving a fuck about what other people think about you, not giving a fuck about failing, because like, and therefore understanding how, much of a teacher failing is. But yeah, I mean, you reminded me. I wanted to make a point about the psychological part that, and that's why I was talking about like my experience and all that, because that's what I've seen over and over again, right? It's the physical part's relatively easy, right, to do. Mm-hmm. It's the psychological part as it pertains to not beating yourself up, because that is super important. That's something I harp on big time with my clients and my athletes, is seeing it for what it is, right? But that's also kind of what I was saying a second ago about the failure part is seeing failure for what it is. And failure is a teacher, and that's it, right? Mm-hmm. Like it is no more, no less. It is not a indictment on yourself. It is not a something that determines your value as a human being or how good you are at something or whatever. You know what I mean? It's a teacher. And if you use it as a teacher, it can be powerful and it can be amazing. And it can be transformative. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, that mindset thing, man. And especially as it pertains to nutrition, man, that's the hard part, dude, is the mindset as it pertains to nutrition. And like you said, there's so much deeper stuff that need to be addressed. And let me tell you kind of a funny story about that one of my wife's clients, she's a trainer as well. But she doesn't do nutrition. She frankly doesn't like to mess with the neuroses of people when it comes to dealing with nutrition and all of the issues that, like we were talking about, just inevitably come. And so one of her clients, after a couple of months, she's like, not losing the weight she wanted. And my wife kept being like, look, like I keep telling you, what you eat is what determines like how your body changes. Like you can work out with me all day. Doesn't really matter after a certain point. Like you need to focus on that. So like talk to Mike. So finally she's like, all right, let me do this. It's super insecure, woman, like still is living with her mom, and like super nice lady. I'm not trying to like, say anything about her. Just like kind of a shy person, not someone that ventures out, not someone that has very strong belief in herself or love for herself, frankly. And, so we start the nutrition plan, and long story short is after like, I think it's like a day, maybe two, she messages me and is like, just like, I don't know, a bunch of concerns and just like panic, right? Panic. I can't do this. Oh my God. Like, what about this? I can't do that. I can't eat that. And I straight up told her, I kind of gave her a little tough love. I was like, look, I've been doing this a really long time. The formula works. Like, this is new to you. This isn't new to me, right? So I would ask you to kind of conform and adapt to what I'm asking you to do, and not ask me to change it for you, right? You're not the special flower. Just like, trust me, like give it some time. Let's do this, right? She's like, all right, let's try it. Then like probably the next day, I get another phone call or a text message or something, and just same thing, panic. And like, I was real with her. I was like, look, it's become apparent to me that, what you need to address before you can make this successful is some type of psychological component. There's a mindset thing, maybe some past trauma. I don't know. But like, I would love to help you get in touch with someone to maybe address that so you can make some progress on this. Like I want you to be successful at this, but I'm just telling you, unless you address the mindset and whatever going on psychologically, like it's not going to work. And she got very offended by that and ended up just quitting everything, just quitting working with me, with my wife, everything. And, I was worried that my wife was going to be mad at me, but she's, kind of like, I can't be mad at you. That's her thing. You're real with her. It's not a lie, and the truth hurts, So yeah, like you said, man, the mindset's tough. And the fact that you mastered it enough to lose the weight and realize that and like keep it off, man, kudos to you, by the way. It's not easy.
Yeah, it wasn't. And well, I think it wasn't easy, but I was working in the more confused area. right? I made it more difficult by just focusing on symptoms instead of dealing with the trauma shit. You know what I mean? Like that stuff. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's kind of simple, you know?
Yeah, well, kind of like that's our mentor of mine used to say this about nutrition. He said nutrition's simple in terms of what you have to do. Like it's pretty straightforward, and in a lot of cases, at least, putting it in practice is what is hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly that's like most things, I suppose, actually.
Right. And by the way, if anybody wants to, go to getfullstrong.com to learn more about Mike's training. Getfullstrong.com.
And we're in Bastrop, Texas, by the way. He was a little bit vague about that earlier. We're about.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to share that. That's all.
Oh, no, I don't mind. Bastrop, Texas.
Right.
I appreciate that, though.
Yeah,
I'm new to this thing, man.
It's all good. It's all good. So I'm interested also, speaking of mindset, what was it like and what was your process of getting into doing it? Was it Tough Mudder or Ironman? What was it? Strongman. What was that like and what is that?
So most people, because like I'll meet people all the time and they'll ask me about it. And this is what I'll say. I'll say, you remember on ESPN, the guys like pull the trucks and planes and, pick up the big rocks and stuff. And like, oh yeah. So it's that, like what you used to see on ESPN back in the 90s, right? Where they'd show the guys like, picking up those big poles and pushing them over and flipping the big tires and all that good stuff and pressing the logs over their head. And I did watch it all growing up and was fascinated by it. I always thought that stuff was so cool. Most people do. And, but I never saw it anywhere in person. I was an athlete. I played, baseball, football, basketball, lifted a lot of weights, but I never saw it anywhere. Any gym I went to, there was never any of that stuff. Like never knew anyone that did it. So I don't know. It was some sort of like mythological thing in my mind, I guess, in a way. These big Herculean dudes just, I don't know where they do it, but they're doing it somewhere, right? And then fast forward to when I became a trainer. It was like the first year I was a trainer. I was like maybe 19, 20 years old. Me, my girlfriend at the time, and a couple other couples and just a couple other people from the gym got a beach house at the Outer Banks, North Carolina. And, we were there for like a week. So, of course, I'm not going to not train for a week. So we found a gym naturally right near the house. And it was CrossFit Outer Banks. And I was a little bit worried because I don't do CrossFit. I'm not a huge CrossFit fan, but I was like, they're usually pretty like welcoming and like, cool about stuff. So I was like, yeah, let me go check it out. Turns out the guy that owned it, Gene Flynn, former Highland Game world champion, Olympic lifting champion, like 6'5", 350, like just muscle, like just big ass dude, cool, welcoming. He had a CrossFit gym really just to pay the bills because it was making him money, but he really had a strength gym. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was so cool. It had all the old timey strongman stuff. All classic strongman stuff that I then ended up competing in, and like just everything that a meathead like me would think is cool. And I remember being there one day, I was supposed to be there for like an hour, just get in and out. I ended up being there for like 6 hours because the guy that was working the front desk, get this, he was legally blind and he was the national champion at the time. He could squat like 700 pounds. Like, nice. It was ridiculous. I always thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point he had us pulling the girl I was with, it was one of our friends. She brought her Suburban. So he was like, hey, let's go pull that. So we harnessed up and we're pulling it behind us. We're attached to it, pulling it. And at one point I was pulling it and the blind guy was steering. And I remember hearing just on the side there as I was pulling, my friend Sarah being like, should I be concerned that the blind guy is, controlling my vehicle right now, like steering my vehicle? It was pretty funny. But anyways, I was there for like 6 hours. Just he was taking me through everything. I tried everything out and then I was hooked. So I remember calling my training partner at the time and being like, dude, I know what we're doing. So we found a contest. It turns out there's a federation in America. At the time, it was called North American Strongman. And we found a contest, I think it was like 3-4 hours away up in bumfuck Pennsylvania, because I lived in Northern Virginia at the time, right outside DC. And we humped up there the night before, got some dinner at some random restaurant, Charlie's or some shit, and competed in the parking lot of the local fire department. I didn't know anything about it at that time, but it turns out the president of the organization was there. It was actually kind of a big show. I ended up winning the contest and was just hooked. And I won like 3 more in a row. And I ended up winning nationals 2 times, 2018, 2019. And it's fun, man. And that's how I met my wife, actually. She competed. She ended up taking, 3rd or 4th in the world at the Arnold Championships in Ohio. It's a famous fitness festival every year. And yeah, she's a consummate badass, much more impressive than I am.
Nice. And speaking of badass, what was it like? Like, oh, I've been talking about this a lot on my show, and it might be a left turn, but I don't care. This is conservatish. Y'all know that. I like going on tangents and talking about different topics, or whatever.
And you've heard me
my
talking.
interest.
I go out on tangents every 5 seconds.
Right. What was it like being a? What is it like being a dad? What was it like? What was that process like? Of like, okay, like, so as an example, for me, when I was in my 20s, I used to think, I'm too selfish. I'm too selfish to have kids. You know what I mean? And maybe an element of that was a little bit true, but that was a self-fulfilling prophecy for me. I liked being selfish. I was kind of a dick in a lot of ways. And I had the experience of, I was with some a girlfriend back in like 2015, and all of a sudden I remember it kind of I remember it specifically. I was on the street somewhere in San Francisco, and I was walking somewhere, and I look at this dad with this, I think it was a little boy, like on his shoulder, like just, whatever. And all of a sudden I was hit in the gut with this feeling like, uh-oh, I think I want kids. And I'm like, oh no. And it was like bad news for me, because I'm like, this selfish guy, oh, I have all my ideas about what men and women do and how do they, I was big into Patrice O'Neill, and I was using a lot of similar to what a lot of the trad red pill boys are doing now. I've already done that, boys. I get it. I understand. Yeah. You're angry and you need to do some trauma.
It's gonna be a dead end, I promise.
So I was doing all that stuff, and all of a sudden I was hit with that, and it wasn't my fault. It wasn't something I was thinking about. I wasn't trying. I was with this girl, and I thought like, oh, I think I could have kids with this girl. And I was hit with that. And now, a year or two later, I started thinking like, okay, yeah, all right, fuck it. It just keeps happening, and I could see this, and I think that's where God's pulling me. And now, yeah, I'm definitely in that mode. But were you ever in that mode yourself?
Oh, absolutely. So because that was quite the left turn, but I like the left turn. Me and my wife had a baby in September, our first child. So this is an interesting topic because yes, I definitely had that mode, but what's interesting is all growing up, I knew from an early age that I really wanted to have kids. I love the idea of being a father. I love the idea of like what I would always think of, because I was a big time athlete as a kid, was playing sports with my kids. Right. At that time, I always wanted a boy, and I wanted to teach them, how to change the oil and all that kind of shit, and throw the baseball and all that kind of, all American stuff. And then I don't know, I'd say probably around like 17, 18, I don't even remember why, honestly. I've tried to think about this and figure out why it happened, like specifically, because I feel like there was kind of a turning point and it wasn't gradual. But like I just decided, I was like, nah, fuck that. That's a bad idea. And I said this, I lied to myself in the same way. I'm too selfish for that. I don't want to like take the time. And I would make the joke. I mean, if they came out at like 6 years old talking and potty trained and shit, like maybe then, but I don't want to deal with that, blah, blah, blah. And what's funny about that is I'm actually loving this little baby stage. I didn't know how much I was going to like it, because I don't know, I never had kids, and I've never really spent any time around babies. But anyways, baby stage is awesome. Watch out, Khaleesi. Sorry, dogs. Two of my dogs don't like each other. Well, one doesn't like the one. But anyways, yeah, I had that stage where, I'm too selfish and all that nonsense. But honestly, I know a lot of it was just the world. And like, honestly, at that time, I feel bad for men nowadays trying to date, because even at that time, like women, I thought modern women were kind of misguided, you could say. And I was just kind of like jaded in that way. So they don't want kids anyways. They think motherhood's stupid and for idiots. And it's some second-hand thing, and you've lost if you've done it and you've given up and all this nonsense. So like, why would I want to have that, right? Like, why would I want to push that on someone? And like, I think that's a lot of what it was. But yes, as a long way of saying yes. And then even when me and my wife first got together, she didn't have a great family life. She didn't have great role models. So she never really just thought about being a mom. So she kind of thought she didn't want to have kids, or really like never really thought about even being married. But then she met me, and I just, I'm so great. She just knew. But yeah, she didn't want to have kids. And when we first talked about it, I basically said to her, I was like, look, it's up to you ultimately. Like, I could take it or leave it. Like, you know, I think it'd be kind of cool in some ways, but like, the world kind of sucks. So like, whatever. And she was like, oh no, I definitely don't want to have kids. Definitely not, you know, like, and you won't change my mind. I won't change my mind. But what's funny is, I don't know why, but I always just had this feeling, you know, she was 27 at the time when we first met. I was like, you know what? I'm going to just say this to her. Just know that you haven't closed that door, babe. Don't think you put yourself in a box and think you can't change your mind on that. If you ever do change your mind, like, don't feel embarrassed. Don't feel like you can't change your mind. Like, if you change your mind, that's fine. Like, just let me know. And sure enough, her brother, who's younger than her, had a baby with his wife, and we went to visit her. And I kind of had a feeling this would happen too. We drove to Buffalo, New York, where she's from, visited the baby. I'm holding the baby. I could just see it when she's holding that baby. You know, I was like, yep, it's coming. Sure enough, a week or two later, she's like, I think I want to have kids. And I was like, all right, when do you want to have kids? You know? And so we made a plan to, all right, let's kind of like get ready, like get our bodies ready, you know, detox, not drink, like kind of make sure we're ready to, you know, to make sure it's the best baby we can have. And we'll try on Christmas Eve, excuse me. And then what's funny is when we went to our midwife for our first appointment, and she kind of tracked everything based on period, she's like, I think you conceived on the 24th or the 25th. And I was like, first try.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool. So yeah, we had a great time with all that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had there's this doula friend of mine, Emily Stanwyck, over here in Austin. Really, I had her on my show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she is.
Yeah.
We had a great conversation on CONSERVATISH a couple months ago, and good people. And it's interesting to me. I think not just because I'm, interested in having kids, but like I want to make sure that I prepare as much as I can. There's never going to be perfect, ever. But like I'm like, okay, whenever I do meet whoever she is, I want to make sure that like my mind is right, so that I know kind of what my goals are and what I want, like. We don't need to get it, but like circumcision and things like that. Like, I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm on board with whatever. And, and so it's been good to do that research. I also think, just to speak to a little bit of the to anarchy game. I do see some people in that same black-pilled area who not only miss the idea of self-care and trauma work, but also miss the idea that, I've heard that same thing. The world's so screwed up. Why would I want to bring someone into it? Dum-dums. Do you know how you fix the world? By bringing more good ones into it. That's how you do it. You know what I mean?
I saw something that speaks to this, and it said, where there is darkness and you want light, you must bring light, right? Like, it was talking to this subject, and I was like, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like you just, a lot of people kind of have this weird fantasy, and sometimes I get into it too, where it's just like, number one, it's all the end of the world. Number two, it's right here with us. And number three, maybe there's a savior who could come, whether it be Trump or RFK or whoever the fuck. I don't want us to do it ourselves. That's scary. There's gray area there, right? Who knows? It's chaotic. I don't want to let go of the, like that video I posted earlier. I don't want to let go of the institutions that no longer serve me, because that's all I've known. Right. But an element of that is that black pill shit about like, oh, I don't want to bring kids into the world. I'm sorry, but kids were brought into the world during World War II. Kids were brought into the world during, potato famines.
Dude,
kids were brought into the world
kids were brought into the world during slavery, for God's sakes.
You talking about right now? No, it's
yeah. Which slavery, right?
Right. No, it's absolutely true. The only way to like help that is like to make more good ones who are kind of prepared. This is, in the homeschooling game, there's a lot of like making fun of that old idea of like, oh, if you homeschool your kids, they'll be weird or they won't fit in society. Yeah, bro. I understand. I'm fully aware. I don't want them to fit in.
Though?
Yeah.
Talking about where it says like 1990s, if you homeschool your kids, they'll be weird. 2023, kids are identifying as cross-dressing unicorns. Like,
right.
Like, All right.
And the way to fix it is incremental, and the way to fix it is self-care, and the way and an element of that is bringing in people into the world who do have a good head on their shoulders, who do know how to eat, who do know how to take care of their bodies, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, who have the right moral compass as at least it pertains to your perspective and beliefs and all that. Which here, like real quick, I want to say something about that since I mentioned it. And that's the problem with the world is like at this point, I would take people having a moral compass because most people are just completely devoid of one. Because let me tell you, if you at least have a moral compass and like a code that you live by, at least that's something, right? Most people don't have anything. But anyways. What I think is very interesting about what you said, and what I've been saying for a long time, and something that is just another thing that leftists, it confounds me about leftists is, a lot of leftists, follow the was it Gloria Steinem, right? That's the crazy feminist chick, right?
Yeah, there's many, but yeah, she's one.
Right, but she's like one of one of the leaders of the movement back, who's created the actual feminist movement, right? Which, by the way, I have nothing against the feminist movement. I think the actual idea behind feminism is great, equality. I'm a huge fan of that. But what Gloria Steinem said about having kids and all that, her having never had them or anything like that. It's interesting that she's speaking on that subject, but how she basically said, it's like your duty as a warrior in this fight for equality to go out and get jobs and have careers and make money and, blah, 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 and not rely on men and all that. And, don't stay at home and take care of the kids. And that's your duty. And so that's what happened, right? That's what a lot of women did. And here we are, as a result. Let's be real here. It's a pretty talked about thing in our circles. Like, I was just, what was that guy? Charlie Kirk or whatever. I'm not a huge fan of him, but his whole thing about the, like being a partner in a law firm isn't as fulfilling as being like a mom and like raising children and all that. And what I'm getting at with this whole diatribe is it's interesting to me how they've embraced that. And then at the same time, they're the people who want to change the world and change racism and all this, stuff. And like you said, how do you do that? What is it? Frederick Douglass quote is where it says essentially that it's easier to raise a good child than to fix a broken man. And that's what we're talking about here. Like, if you really want to change the world, y'all have been completely had, because that is by being mothers to the children of the people you want in the world, right? And yet they're out there yelling at us and creating division and just getting their retribution, I guess, for all the hatred they have for the world and themselves. And that's why it's so hollow to me, because it's like, if you really wanted to change the world, you'd recognize that, like, hey, create the world you want, not by yelling at people who already exist, but by creating the next generation, like influencing them that way. And that's the thing I don't understand, considering how anti-motherhood they are in a lot of cases. You know what I mean? And by and large, it's really ass backwards, in my opinion.
Right. And as much as we talk a lot about, in the circles that I'm in, that, men get short shrift, and that's absolutely true. And I've talked about it many, many times. We're the strong majority of suicides, fill in the blank. But I think feminism as it is currently manifested, and this is not new ground, but fucks women most. I've had countless conversations with women who have lost the window. It's a scary topic. It's a deep, who have lost the window. They can't have kids, and that's it, right? Who are in their 50s, 60s and are like, well, I could see the benefits of having it now. Too late, right? And I'm not trying to scare nobody, but I am just trying to say you can't fuck with fulfillment. You can't fuck with fulfillment, and that's boys and girls too. Like, you can't fuck with fulfillment. And as much as we want to, have all these lofty ideals and what I'm supposed to like on paper, everybody who has, I always go back to that, the rape joke example. There's so many people, like, you ask a woman like 5 minutes before she goes into a comedy club, would you ever laugh at a rape joke? And she's like, no, I would never. It's fundamentally bad. And blah, 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 blah. When the lights are down and she's in the club and she's with her man and everybody's all riding the comedy wave together, right? Nature steps in, fulfillment steps in, reality steps in, and you laugh. Whether you know it or not, that's what good comedy does. It's by surprise. And then you go on the ride that the comedian or the artist is taking you on, right? And they laugh. But then as soon as they leave, it's like, would you ever laugh at a No, I would never. It's like, guys, if this is my only life, which I believe it is, I want to be fulfilled. I want to be happy, and not fulfilled in this hedonistic sense where I'm, doing everything I want regardless of the consequences, inner or outer. But I am saying this is my only life, and I want fulfillment. And God damn it, if like I was saying, spent my 20s just like, no, this would never be fulfilling around having kids, as an example. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I think this is what I want. So I don't give a fuck if someone has bad ideas about that or what someone else's opinion about that. I really don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Because this is my only life, and I want fulfillment. I want satisfaction. I want to be living my most, as gay as it sounds, my most true self. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And what's so sad about the people who have fallen victim to that leftist ideology is they're pawns in a much bigger game, and their emotions are being played on, and this need for fulfillment is largely being played on in many ways. And like you kind of touched on like the fat acceptance movement and stuff like that earlier. And did you see the report? Was it like 8 or 10 fat influencers all died before they were 40? Because like reality is still a thing, right? And the fulfillment that people are seeking now is so superficial, short-lived. It's all just people wanting to chase the dragon over and over again with these external things, right? I mean, food, porn, drugs, alcohol. I mean, alcohol is a drug, but like, it's its own kind of separate category a little bit. But I mean, there's so much more beyond that. Like workaholism, I think, is probably one of the biggest things. And a lot of that I understand and certainly recognize isn't necessarily the workaholic's fault, right? Like the demands from their employer. Like I have a couple guys that work for Tesla, and like I try to talk to them about work-life balance, and they're just like, dude, I won't have a job, like straight up. You know what I mean? And so it's like, what do I say to them? Well, we'll just be okay with not having a job. Like, no, right? They have families to support and shit, right? And so like, yeah, the fulfillment thing is a tough thing because a lot of people have been misled in regards to what that is. And like you said, like before you said, it's not a hedonistic fulfillment. And the irony of that isn't true fulfillment, right? And like you said, these 56-year-old ladies you talk to, who I've met as well, have been had.
Right.
And they have been had yet again.
And who benefits? This is what I keep saying, and I think it harkens back to the black pill conversation we were having earlier. Who benefits from girls thinking one woman, future is female? Old white dudes, bitch. That's who benefits. That's who benefits of you not having kids. That's who benefits off you, hating men. That's who benefits of you being in the workforce. How much? Guess when there was one household giving taxes to the government, now they have two in the household giving taxes to the government. Who fucking benefits off there being less people in the world, aka you not having a kid, aka abortion? Who fucking benefits, right? It's old white dudes, usually in fucking Davos, motherfucker. It's the oligarchs in our world who want to dangle this false fulfillment at you so that you'll chase it, you'll grab it, and then you'll suffer. And they say, gotcha, bitch.
Distracted.
What?
And stay distracted.
And just to circle that back, I think that's an element of why I think a lot of the people in the anti-government game or whatever the fuck the umbrella miss that, is because who benefits off you being afraid? Same motherfuckers. Who benefits off you going, posting every 5 seconds about some trans influencer who has fucking 2 followers and a shit fuck opinion? Did you see? You know who likes it when you post that, everybody? Old white oligarchs. Ta-da! Over and fucking over again. You being upset, you being so depressed that you can't, I'm just going to get my guns and hunker down and wait for them to come get me. Guys, you're playing into their fucking hand.
And it's classic divide and conquer. You know what I mean? Like it's and distraction. I mean, it's something. It's nothing new. You know what I mean? It's nothing new from governments that hasn't been done throughout all of society. I mean,
absolutely.
And what I think is interesting, if you look at the fall of Rome, a lot of it might seem familiar if you're not familiar with it, and it's so fucked because I agree with you 1,000,000%, and that's something I struggle with. If I'm being honest, is not in my own head. I don't go online and post and blah 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 and all that stuff. Like I'm actually, as you know, not all that active on social media, but it's I definitely follow some outlets that kind of I think keep it real and really portray what's going on. But yeah, like I mean, all the time you're being inundated with stuff. And like, I even said to my wife the other day, I was like, I think I need to unfollow like all of them because it's playing into what they want. Like I do it to not have my head in the sand and like, cause like, I think going the opposite direction is no good either. Having your head in the sand and just like, oh, la-di-da-di-da, everything's fine. If we vote the right person in, we'll be okay. And it's, blah, blah. And it's like, nah, guys, it's so much more fucked than that. So like, I don't want to be that, but also like hyper focusing is like you said, it's letting them win in many ways and not what I want. And then they've taken my life already. Right. And like, that's what they want. And so it's a hard balance to strike, to say the least. Much easier said than done, and all that cliche bullshit. But it's something, I definitely struggle with. Is exactly that.
Right, but it is possible, and I think that when I was talking about this with somebody a couple last week. I think one of the good things. I think it's a good thing that conservatives were fighting about the calendar. I think it's a good thing. Did you see that nonsense on Twitter the other day?
I don't think so, actually.
It's all good. Some conservative women put out a calendar of them kind of like, it wasn't even thirst trapping. It was just like, okay, some cleavage, or a swimming suit or whatever. And they're conservatives and they're traditional, blah, blah, blah. They're females and posting, like this calendar. I don't even know who benefited from it, but might have even been, no, I don't even know. Never mind. Doesn't matter. So they did that, and a bunch of conservatives online were like, that's not conservatism, and you shouldn't, right? And regardless of where we stand on that, because I think there's good points to both things. I think it's good that there was infighting among conservatives, and the reason why I think it's good there was infighting among conservatives is that that's how you sharpen the movement. That's how you get better. When I'm bowling and you're a little kid and you're bowling and you try to figure out how to, there's the bumpers on the sides of the thing, and you go a little too left and you hit the bumper, you go a little too right and you hit the bumper, right? That's how we move forward, is by codifying and clarifying what the movement, quote unquote, is. Now, I think it should be very, very open. I think it should be essentially, the way I put it is just, anybody who's not the lizards is on my side. But that means that there's going to be a lot of motherfuckers in the game, in the movement, who I disagree with. And am I mature enough to allow that to happen without having to enforce my ideology, right? The state is fucked, but if I was in charge of the state, right? Shut the fuck up, right? That's what the state does. It uses people. So I think it's good that there was infighting, because it clarifies and codifies like, oh, okay, good. We're allowed to disagree with each other, right? And, maybe we need a little tuck in here and a little sharpening here and maybe a little focus here and blah, blah, blah. And that's how we improve. If everything was just good and conservatives never need to get better and, that's leftism. That's fucking, you know what I mean? It's not infighting when it's the Marxists, right? Because as soon as they got power, what did we see in Russia? We saw the people who helped implement the fucking USSR get hanged and executed and shoved off to gulags as well. They became enemies of the revolution right away. So if we can flex that muscle of allowing ourselves to disagree, and I think it could only benefit, because it shows that this movement is not a monolith, and that's a good thing,
Absolutely, I agree with that, and it made me think of something you said earlier about how a lot of, and I never heard the term until you used it, black pilled, but I through context I understand what you're talking about, and it's a great term. The black pilled people are, so extremes are what I'm against, right? So that's why I say leftists are not liberals, right? Because leftists are my problem. They are the extremes on this side. Right. Just like I don't like the far right, right? Like, I don't like those terms. I don't like terms like this in general, but again, just for simplicity's sake, so we all understand what I'm saying, extremes are what I don't like. And therefore those labels I don't like either. But anyone who just blindly follows any ideology on any side in any way is the problem, right? And the issue now is that the leftists are the ones in power, essentially, and who have the mainstream. They have Hollywood, they have politics, they have the DOJ and all the letter agencies are in their pocket, for God's sakes. So that's my issue. But something you said earlier, I agree with 1,000,000% that a lot of the black pilled, but even a lot of just the regular red pilled, conservatives kind of miss out on is the beneficial stuff that has come from the kind of, the old saying of fiscally conservative, socially liberal, right? Those socially liberal elements, right, are what we're talking about. Like, I don't give a shit about what gay people do. Like, I really don't. Like, do what you want, have the same rights as me. I think that's fair. Cool, right? Awesome, right? I don't care about that. And what I'm talking about in particular is something that's a little bit more hippie-ish, but like a lot of people, if you were to bring up ego, right, to a lot of people, a lot of conservatives, right, they would, that's some hippie leftist liberal shit or something. And it's like, dude, getting rid of ego is beneficial for anyone. That is a universal thing. And that's another example, just like you brought up earlier, of one where it's like, guys, can we not shoot ourselves in the foot and just be the angry old white men that have been the butt of jokes in the Republican Party forever? You know what I mean? Can we modernize this a little bit and like bring some good, fresh ideas while also staying true to the conservative element and like traditional values? Because that's what I think about it, right? It's like, we're in 2023, right? We have all this technology. We've come so far. We've learned a lot. Let's do what the people in 1900 weren't able to do. They were still dealing with like typhoid fever and crap like that. And so they couldn't enjoy the benefit of the traditional way of life as much. Some people recognized it back then for sure, but some people were wanted to get out of that and take advantage of all the modern technology and conveniences as quickly as they could. Right. So now that we've come this far, all right, we've seen the technology, we've had the conveniences. We a lot of us can recognize, hey, the more traditional elements should remain.
Right.
But hey, these new ideas that we brought, that's good too. That hippie shit, that Buddhist shit, whatever. Like, so why can't we meld the two? And some people, ironically, because of their ego, on the right, in the conservative element, libertarian, whatever, have that kind of that like old white man mentality is the way I put it, right? Of like, being very rigid and not being open to, any what, you're eating that Asian food, like shit like that. It's like, come on, man.
Well, they don't say it that nice either.
Right. Well,
they belong on my show because of all the racist things I say. But okay, I agree, and I'll bring it a step further in this. I think that closed-mindedness that happens is 100 or at least 99% reactionary. Right? They hunker down into the traditional values because they think, well, anything left of center must be of Satan or must be of this or must be of that, right? When in reality, what's happening is it's the lizards and the state doing what they always do, right? What's his face? James, fuck, I forgot his name. James Lindsay. James Lindsay has been talking about it a lot. He said the Christian nationalism movement is also a psyop. He's like, okay, do you think that in a few years when the leftists, if the leftists lose and it's all blah, 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 that the conservatives won't go, oh, okay, well then we'll be in charge and we'll be, I'm in charge of the gulags now. It's like, no, bro, I'm anti-gulag. That's what I don't care who's in charge of it. I'm anti-disarmament. I don't care who's doing it, what hat they're fucking wearing, whether it be a pussy hat or a MAGA hat. I'm anti-censorship. I'm anti-principles before personalities, like I always talk about. So I don't want to get duped into thinking that, well, now that my guys, that's dupe bullshit. That's dark fucking energy. And the state, the lizards will put on whatever hat you need. They just want the fucking power and the money.
Absolutely. And that's what I think is so important for people to realize, that it transcends so greatly left, right, Democrat, Republican. I mean, I believe it's truly good versus evil, right? Like at this point, and evil is just showing itself in a way that it hasn't perhaps in the past. At least I haven't been in the past, so I can't say, but it seems like it. Because technology mainly, I think that's the X factor, is the technology is such that the control can be complete. And I was watching someone kind of similar to you talking about this on I think it was IG recently, and they were saying like, yeah, they've always wanted to do this. They just didn't have the technology to surveil everyone. I mean, Bill Gates brags about how his satellites can cover every inch of the earth 24/7, right? And so these new capabilities are, I mean, like, why are they talking about aliens all of a sudden, right? Like, why all of a sudden is that okay to hey, yeah, no, we've known about it. Sorry, guys. And it's like not a big deal. It's like, guys, what? This is so much bigger deal than it's been made out to be. But whatever, man. Like, I mean, we live in bizarro ass backwards world anyways, so fuck it. Like, aliens exist now, and we're all just acting like it's a known thing.
Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, I see all that stuff as another psyop. I see it as all another. They like it when we feel like there's not ground underneath us, right? If it's chaotic, we as humans, it's normal and natural to reach, like the cope thing we were talking at the start of the show, we reach for stability. And if the state is offering, oh, it's chaotic for you, here you go, just grab a hold. It's okay, just grab a hold. Gotcha, bitch. It's the same thing, right? And I will speak to and then I gotta go. I gotta piss and whatever. Yeah, but an element of the white pill part of that, I saw somewhere, I don't know exactly the phraseology of it, the phrasing of it, is that, oh, we're so much, and it's that absolutely true. Oh, we're so surveilled. Oh, there's so much surveillance and the blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes, we are, but so is the state. So are the lizards. They're not able to get away with the think about it, like you said, 1900s. Okay. Do you know the main reason why 90%, 95, I think it was, percent of the world population was under the poverty line at that time? Right? There's many factors, but one of the things is that, well, we idolized, oh, the queen, the king, the emperor, we liked our little slavery, and it was that gap between those classes, the gap between our knowledge, it was all completely. Motherfuckers thought that the king was chosen by God, and they knew it in their soul to be a true thing, and it was, everybody knew it for fucking eons, right? And they thought that he had superpowers at times. They thought that, he was above, so
North Koreans still don't think that he poops, right?
Or at least they have to say that, right?
Right.
But so think about just on the white pill tip. Okay, yeah, we're under more surveillance, but so is the enemy. The enemy is under more pressure. That's why they're grasping for anything right now. That's why they're throwing every psyop in the book at us, and new ones they're just writing at it. Like, you talked about the alien thing. That's a factor. Oh, they're allowing the secret about aliens. Bitch, they just reclassified the JFK files. Stop. Okay. This is not a real thing. They control very, very specifically, right? Even though 95% of everybody knows it was the CIA, 95% of everybody knows, oh, okay, we know what the fuck. That was some nefarious dog shit. But we already know. See, that's the thing. God, universe, whatever the fuck you want to call it, finds a way. Life finds a way. So just because they're now, it's inexorably going to get better. It's inevitably going to get better. It will be chaotic. It will be rocky. But God damn it, while we're riding this wave, everybody, just focus in. Go to getfullstrong.com. Focus in to take care of our little cul-de-sac of responsibility, our sphere of influence, because that's the way we're going to keep ourselves from getting duped. That's the way we keep ourselves from getting swept in the psyop. That's the way we keep our fucking sovereignty and our power. And that's where they can't fucking reach us. They can't fucking reach us. What's that old line from Shawshank Redemption? Well, he's where Andy's in the hole and he's like, yeah, they can't take music from you. You know what I mean? They can take everything. They can control your food. They can control that. When he's talking about being in the prison, it's like, but they can't get your fucking mind, right? So if your mind's not right, that's the ultimate factor. If your mind is right, that's the ultimate factor.
Absolutely. And to piggyback on that and kind of circle back to what we were talking about at the beginning, so much of that, if you don't, if for those listening or whatever, if you don't feel like your mind is right, like I was saying earlier, consider that nutritional element, that environmental element, because the lizards, I'm going to start using that now. The lizards definitely are purposefully doing some things to affect our brains. I mean, just look up fluoride in the water. There's a reason why I think there's only like 2 countries in Europe that allow the use of fluoride, by the way, just if in case you didn't know. It's banned everywhere else because it's a known neurotoxin. Harvard did a study a couple of years ago. But anyways, I digress. But yeah, the other thing I want to add real quick to kind of finalize and add to your thought about, like fighting the psyop and like take care of yourself and all that. Live in the moment, guys. We suffer when we try to predict the future. We suffer when we try to change the past, right? Like live in the moment, because that's what they're trying to take from you. Because, hey, let's say, that there's that big hole in the sun that I heard about the other day, that if we get a strong enough, solar flare is going to disintegrate us all, right? So if that happens tomorrow, all we had was today. So if you were worrying about tomorrow today, fuck you, that ain't too good. So live in the moment, guys. That is like, to me, that's the meaning of life. It's as simple as that, is live in the moment as much as you possibly can. And don't suffer the future. Don't suffer the past.
Right. And that's that message for exactly like what you're saying. That's the message that I keep pushing out for 2024 is, regardless, of course, it's an election year. Of course, they're going to ramp up the psyops. It's going to be crazy. But not only will it inexorably get better, but regardless of what they do, I know I'm right with my God. And I know I'm right with myself, and I know who I am, and I can't be bought. I survived the mandates, the vaccine mandates, unvaccinated in Manhattan. You know what I mean? Like that was I'm very grateful that I survived that, that I lived through that, because now I know, I can't be bought for shit. I can't be bought for segregation. I can't be bought for a fucking donut. I can't be bought for any of that shit. Right. So that only made me a stronger human being and have a stronger spirit. Right. Yes, but it also, it soured a lot of people too. And I'm not saying I'm not angry. Of course I am. And I talk about it all the fucking time, but you can choose to let it turn you sour, or you can choose to let it strengthen you, and that's what we need to. So, I appreciate the focus, and I appreciate what you do in order to help, not just do it for yourself and be an example of that, but also show other people how to.
Yeah, man, I'd love to do it. And we're here for it.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, go to getfullstrong.com. Look up Fullsterkur_training. That's FULLSTERKUR_training on Instagram, and the same thing on without the underscore. Which platform was that?
Facebook.
Oh, Facebook. Okay. Yeah, talk to Mike, man, and take care of yourself. If you're in the Bastrop, Austin area, good dude to know, good dude to work with.
We do virtual as well, by the way.
Oh, you do virtual as well? Okay, cool.
Yeah, we do work with people virtually.
Okay, cool. Is there anything else you'd like to promote?
Nah, man, not promote in that sense. Just promote being positive, guys. Love yourselves, man. That's what I see as a big problem, is people don't love themselves. They don't respect themselves, so they don't respect or love anyone else. And that's why we live in the world we live in. So do the work, confront things, don't be a victim, take responsibility, love yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching, make sure you subscribe, share, rate, and review. Leave a comment. It helps the algorithm. I'm so fucking shadow banned. I just had another thing removed from Instagram, and it was 5 years old. So I'm fighting hard. If you want to follow my backup on Instagram, that would be helpful, because the white liberals might zap that one soon. That backup account is @CONSERVATISH. And if you want to follow my main account, it's Peter_Feliciano, FELICIANO. And you can find me on Twitter @Rule62Peter. Thank you very much, everybody. And keep an eye out. I'm going to be doing more merch at peterfeliciano.com. Because I'm working on an album. I'm going to be writing, recording, and releasing an album in 2024. Pete does music. How dare you not know that I do music? Go to my fucking Spotify, go to iTunes. I put an album, a self-titled album in 2019. And you're racist if you don't listen to it. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you again, Mike, for joining me. I'll go ahead and end the recording now.
All right. Later, man.